Now let's continue with more peaceful resistance stories. I've got strippers protesting at a local church. Topless. Why is this? Via madworldnews.com. There's video. Outraged strippers topless in front of a local church. A group of Ohio strippers and a strip club owner, fed up with the local church's tactics to shut the business down, showed up on Sunday's worship to demonstrate against the pastor and parishioners, some of them going sans clothing. The owner of the Foxhole North Strip Club and its employees protested outside of the New Bennings Church in Warsaw to vent their frustrations with Pastor Bill Dunphy and his congregation, who've been staging demonstrations outside the Foxhole for years in an attempt to put them out of business. Thomas George, who owns the Foxhole, says that he's tired of the unchristian-like manner in which the church's members behave. I have to point out the hypocrisy that I see, he said. They come up every weekend, and they're very abusive and certainly unchristian-like, calling the girls expletive and expletive. They're abusive to the customers. They sit out with video cameras, they take pictures of license plates, and tell them they're posting them to the web. Dunphy, however, isn't apologetic about how his church behaves towards the club, and said he won't stop until they're out of business. I hope people realize that the Foxhole has no business in this community, Dunphy says. I take very seriously the responsibility as a pastor to see to it that the gospel of Christ is lifted up, that Christ himself is lifted up, and that the evil is controlled. According to the Conshohocken Tribune, about 30 dancers, other staff, family, and friends from the Foxhole North marched with protest signs or sat in chairs across from the church. They're also reporting that 6 of the women bared their breasts for all to see, which caused the church to hang tarps so their attendees didn't have to see. What? Now, why is that? What is that about, hanging up tarps so they don't have to see? Aren't you just closing yourself in? If you don't want to see, don't look. But the temptation might be too much. George said that he realizes the demonstration was extreme, but he doesn't think it's evil. Members of the church disagreed and can be seen in the video getting into a shouting match with demonstrators. One of the protesters shouted, quote, "Love is the answer. And you don't have it, baby. God is love." Here's the report.
Tonight, a rural Ohio church was the site of an eye-popping protest today. The Conshohocken County Church has been picketing a Warsaw strip club for years, and today employees of the club took the fight to the church and took off their tops in the process. The sign outside New Beginnings Ministries in Warsaw welcomes all, but today's Sunday service had some decidedly unwelcome visitors. Women bearing picket signs and bearing their bodies for all to see. Thomas George is the man behind the protest.
I have to point out the hypocrisy that I see.
George is the owner of a strip club called the Foxhole North. He says for years, New Beginnings has worked to bring his club to an end.
They come up every weekend. They're very abusive and certainly unchristian-like, calling the girls and they're abusive to the customers. They sit out with video cameras. They take pictures of license plates, tell them they're posting them to the web.
Pastor Bill Dunphy makes no secret of his intentions.
I hope that he will realize that the Foxhole has no business in this community.
And makes no apologies for his crusade against the club.
I take very seriously the responsibility as a pastor to see to it that the gospel of Christ is lifted up, that Christ himself is lifted up, and that evil is confronted.
George admits today's topless protest is an extreme measure, but says it's far from evil, as eyes of churchgoers were protected behind a hanging tarp.
Wow, that tarp was huge. Did you get a look at that? For our viewing audience at home, you can see this tarp covers the entire church window. It seems to be they had no light at all. Talk about blocking yourself in. Seems like they really shot themselves in the foot on that protest.